Okay. All right. Let's, okay. Let's make sure everything is working now. I think, I believe we are live now again. Okay. Everything is up. Yes. The internet has not defeated us today. Again. All right. All right. Half a day. Todos hamzugwena hudzung. Half a day, everyone. Inan husi Michael Luhan Bavakwa. My name is Michael Luhan Bavakwa, and I am once again your host for Fanachu. And it is May 2025. And Atanzo, I am wearing my Bernie shirt. And some of you might be wondering, Bernie, Hadziesti Bernie. Is this Bernie Santos? Sumaska Gidza Jigu. Is this Bernie Santos who lives up in Jigu? Is this Bernie Adda or is this Bernie? Who is this Bernie of the shirt that I am wearing? Well, if you've been following politics, economic discussions for the past few decades, then of course in the United States and to some extent globally, then the name Bernie is synonymous with leftist politics, synonymous with a certain type of political conversation and economic conversation. And so this shirt is very appropriate for the type of conversation that we're going to be having today when we're talking about things like sustainability, equitable business models. And some people, when we're thinking about it, we might be thinking about Bernie Sanders. We're thinking that these types of conversations come from outside. They come from conversations in the States, and that's one way that we can engage. But another way that we can think about sustainable, equitable, democratic business models too is we can look at our cultures in Micronesia. We can look at ourselves. We can look at how peoples in this region, how we might practice business that's aligned with our values, aligned with how we would take care of our resources, how we would take care of our communities, and so on. And especially nowadays, where we live in a world in which every single thing can have a value attached to it, can be converted into an NFT, and everything in the universe is crypto, it's important that we ground our economic philosophies in things that serve our communities. And so that's why I am so very happy to have with me for today's episode of Fanachu Tewid Meresbang, who is from Pacificnesian Equities, who was working for more than a year on getting a law passed to promote cooperatives as a business model, economic model here in Guam, but has also been promoting economic and discussions about sustainable business models here in our region. And so I'm so happy that he's here to talk about this um, on today's episode of Fanachu. And so Hafade Tewet, Sidus Masi for joining.
Today, Ali and Sizus Masi and Sulag so much for having me on your amazing so that we can spread the word and share the work that Pacificnesian Equities along with Micronesian Climate Change Alliance has been doing the past 2 years in getting a bill passed for the community in Guam.
No, Sidus Masi. No, thank you. And can you just introduce yourself a little bit first before we get into the bill itself, before we talk about cooperatives and what they are? Just give us a little bit of a sense of your background first.
Yeah, sure thing. So yeah, thank you. My name is Tewid Meresbang, born and raised here in Guam, from Palau. Left at left at 18, joined the Coast Guard, recently retired last year. But it wasn't until 2000 got a degree in business management. But it wasn't until 2016, coincidentally lines up with your shirt, when I was first introduced to Bernie Sanders. And I like the idea about focusing on different types of economic systems, And so I was introduced to different business models. Business models are equitable, sustainable, focus on communities. And that's what kind of Bernie's platform was focused on. And so I was campaigning for Bernie. I was living in San Francisco, so I was campaigning for him. And I kind of just, he had some really good feedback about the kind of system we have. Why is it so unfair? Why is it that 11, 12, 40 people own half as much wealth as half of the world's population? Those sort of things just don't make any sense. In the U.S., you live in the richest country in the world, and yet you have all these problems. It kind of, it makes you wonder what's going on. And so, I was kind of focused on different types of business models, and I started focusing and studying um, about cooperatives, democratic enterprises, benefit type of businesses, benefit cooperatives. And so since 2016, I've been focusing on my studies on cooperatives, how it helps with the community, and the practicalness of it. And that's kind of how I ended up on the cooperative this cooperative path.
No, thank you for sharing that. I mean, I really, one of the things that I've always enjoyed about hearing uh and thank you for also reminding me about the importance of Micronesia Climate Change Alliance in this discussion too, is because one thing that's great about their work is, of course, that people focus rightfully on climate change alliance, that environmental uh advocacy is primary to what they do, but they also recognize that the economic component is necessary. That sort of the economic models that we in Guam and that the world uses drives environmental policy too. And so that there is a direct relationship there. And so it's the same thing here in the community in Guam, is that if our economic assumptions are a certain way, it will drive the type of society sort of that emerges from that. And so I think yeah, I like the way that, coming from this, you just in your bio there, you were talking about coming from this part of the world, heading out to the States, and then seeing the dramatic economic wealth disparity and inequality out there, and then just thinking, is this right? Is this the way things should be? And I think more people should think about that, because it doesn't make sense to me. I mean, it's kind of like, yeah, not even like you're all on the same island. It's kind of like some of us live on one island, and then all these other people get their own private islands. And so, yeah, thank you for sharing that sort of that part of it though. And so tell us a little bit though about you've mentioned Micronesia Climate Change Alliance and then Pacificnesian Equities there. And so how does one go from kind of being inspired by, Bernie Sanders and sort of that message there into then, not just because a lot of people get inspired by politics, they might they might just buy a t-shirt, or they might just fight with some people online or something like that. But how do then you go into becoming more direct in your advocacy?
Got it. No, thank you for that question as well, and thank you for you know focusing. You're talking about climate change alliance, and how they not only focus on the climate, but they also realize there's a lot of things that are intertwined and affect each other. So there's social injustice, there's economic injustice, there's uh, the different types of justice that we have to deal with. But they are a great ally, and so we're very thankful for their support in allowing us to move forward and passing this bill. We definitely couldn't have done without them. But there's so again, it was back in 2016. I was kind of looking at different ways of focusing on economic justice. And so when we think about it in a philosophical way, and I'll answer your question. I'll go back more direct about the Pacificnesian equities. But when you look at the economy, and you you think about it, the economy belongs to all of us, right? All of our activities that we generate, all the activities that we do in terms of creating, going to work, uh, supporting our communities, working at our jobs, generating those incomes for our family, putting our money into savings, making improvements in our community, picking up trash, cleaning the ocean, all these activities that are generated helps create this economy. So the economy is not just one person or two people that that own it, but you think about it, only few people actually have huge influence over our economy. So, for example, major corporations. Major corporations have huge influence over our lives, over our economic system, over our environment, over our economic outcomes. Yet we don't have any major influence in how that is done. Yeah, we have an influence in how the government is influenced. That's great. We can go out and vote. We can protest and we can tell our senators, we don't like you. We're not going to vote for you. We're going to hold you accountable. Are there flaws? Yeah, there are, because of forces out there that, that could be a whole entire topic and subject about. But when it comes into economic, the economy, there's no economic democracy. And so you kind of look at it at the macro level. How do we actually influence this economy? If these major corporations have huge influence, have control, and have huge influence in the media, in our food system, in polluting our air. Exxon can extract minerals and pump all the fossils into the air that we all breathe in, and we have no say in how that company runs. And so it goes back to, how do we make the economy work for us all? And so there's this thing called economic democracy. So when you look at the major level, there's economic democracy, and how do you influence those economies to work for us all? And then you also look at the micro level. So at the macro levels, okay, if this economy is for us all, how do we shape these major corporations so that way we can shape and influence the outcomes, our economic outcomes? And so I kind of was looking at some documentaries, and I read some books, and there was this author called Richard Wolff, and he talks about democratizing the enterprise. Like, what does that exactly mean? It means workers come together and they democratically own and democratically control their workplace through a cooperative. And so at a micro level, that's how we can begin to regain control over this economy, one by democratizing one enterprise at a time. When we begin to democratize one enterprise at a time through cooperatives, through allowing workers to democratically own and democratically control their workplace, we begin to shape the economy so it works for us all. I love that you have that Bernie shirt, because when Bernie was running for president, him and along with Jeremy Corbyn at the time, there was a national law that they wanted to pass, and this is just how important cooperatives are, and they realize how important cooperatives are. Is that they were going to, one, pass a legislation that says if any time a business is up for sale, they must first offer it to the workers. Any business, whether it's large business or small business, any business that is up for sale, they must first offer it to the workers. And then there was another legislation that they want to pass. If the workers were interested, so it's kind of a legislation called right to first refusal kind of legislation. There's a lot of those things that occur in communities. And then the second one was, if the workers were interested, Then they would provide free training and 0% interest-free loans. And so this is just how powerful cooperatives are. And on a national level, Bernie and Jeremy Corbyn have this vision of democratizing the economy, making the economy work for all by giving the power to the workers, by allowing the workers to democratically own and democratically control the production. A lot of the production that occurs in our economy is not worker owned and not worker controlled. It's often very extractive and very exploitive. It's very hierarchical. It's not equitable. It's not equal. It's not egalitarian. So it means that one or two or three people get to decide what happens to that production, what happens to that profit, and who gets to benefit from those production. So again, because our production is only owned by a few people, it's undemocratic, and it's not egalitarian and not equitable. Equitable meaning that not everybody gets to share in the profits, share in the rewards. And so that's why. So that's kind of why, based on reading the materials of Richard Wolff and his documentaries and his podcast. He has a wonderful podcast called Economic Update. I highly recommend it. He's a graduate of Harvard, a graduate of Yale, and a graduate of Stanford. And he was an economic professor for 30 years. And so Pacificnesian Equities was co-founded by myself and Joseph Certeza, and at one point Ana Borja was a member. And so now it's just Joseph Certeza and I are the members. And so we wanted to focus on empowering workers here on Guam to democratically own and control their workplace. Well, you can't do that if there's no legal infrastructure that is in place. In fact, when we went to go form Pacificnesian Equities, it was very, very expensive. And it took a long time. One is because when you go to an attorney here on Guam and you ask them about forming as a cooperative or a benefit cooperative, they don't understand. They don't have the legal framework, and they don't understand what it means and what it is, and how do you form your articles of organization or articles of incorporation or your bylaws or organic rules in a way that meets the language of being a cooperative. And so you have to go to the states that are leading in cooperatives, help you form the bylaws and the articles of organization. And so we formed Pacificnesian Equities, and then we partnered with folks at Micronesia Climate Change Alliance, Jordan Panuelo, Mina Cantrell Flores, Maria Hernandez, Cami Aguilera, as well as Monica Dioro, and they helped us, as well as Christian St. Nicholas. They helped us, and we formed this alliance and this partnership, and we worked really hard at putting this bill together. Yeah, Ana Borja actually helped put the bill together, put a draft together. It was almost 150-page draft, and we sent it to Senator Perez. We sent it to Perez, and she looked at it over. But we understand. So again, it's a community-driven effort. We know that we want community to be empowered. We want the workers to own and control their workplace. Cooperatives, when you look at it, they have very good positive impact. 80 to 90% of them have a success rate over the course of 5 years, as compared to traditional businesses. I say 80 to 90% because it depends on which country, which regions you're looking at. You're looking at Canada, the UK, it's going to differ 80 to 90%. But I mean, just talking about 90%, that's fantastic. They have a high job retention rate. They often reduce, reuse, and recycle. They often operate in a way that is business friendly and environmentally friendly and sustainable. When workers own and control their workplace, what are they going to do? They're going to be highly likely more conscientious about the kind of waste that is being generated right back into their community. Like, for example, Kmart care about the kind of trash that is that is the kind of what happens to our landfill? No, they don't. So when you go to a Kmart and you look at those shelves, and those shelves are just stacked up high with all these consumer goods, and you wonder, where are all these going to go? Now, if you're a worker and you had control and ownership over the workplace, you'd probably say, oh yeah, well, where are these trash or these things going to end up? They're eventually going to have to end up somewhere, and it's going to be the landfill. So let's try to operate in a way that's generating less waste into our community, into the landfill, which pollutes our river.
Mm. No, man, this is all really, these are all really amazing points. And I put, for those of you that are watching, if you have any questions, please comment with them. I'm gonna wait, hold on 1 second. I'm gonna put up right now the I put it in the chat, the website. So for Pacificnesian Equities, there's the website here. There's more information about sort of the cooperatives, what Tewid here is talking about. There's also an Instagram page as well that you can follow, which has, a lot of the great about the journey in terms of what he was referring to in terms of getting it passed, the work that they did. Um, but even just hearing all of what he was sharing, which is just the surface of like what a cooperative can provide. And what's important there is that, when we think about what we want in the world, that's what we want. We want businesses that are stronger and can tougher, more durable, that take better care of their community, right? We want businesses that give back more to their community. We want businesses where they're not just hiring and firing and they treat their staff like crap. We want businesses where, and so this is the thing though, is that the models that most businesses live and die by aren't great for workers. They're not great for communities. They're based on, you know, people get paid for some time. The environment doesn't get taken care of because the environment gets converted into things and then it gets sold off. And, it's all about the profit. It's all about what can be made, and people at the top make the decisions and stuff like that. And so what I love about what I'm hearing is that the decision making is democratized, sort of and when all of these things are kind of brought from just a few people at the top, when it's kind of brought into a larger group of people, it increases the chances that people will act in ways for the greater good. They will basically, because if it's just one or a few people at the top, it's easier to screw over everyone at the bottom. It's easier to screw over your consumers, screw over your community, your island, the environment, because you're thinking just about the people at the top. If the business, though, is owned by more people get to make those decisions, it's harder to do that because you're thinking this is our business. We aren't separate. We aren't just the CEO. We are this business too. And so I love all this stuff. And so um I love it. It's because it's exactly when we think about all of the problems, all the things that are burning through the environment, burning through the ozone layer, burning through empathy. This is the type of stuff that can counteract that. And so no, and so I wanted to share the links. I put the link to the website for those of you that are watching on the live stream. And please, if you have any questions or any comments, we've already gotten a few questions and a few comments, but please add more because we're gonna have a chance to get into them. But I interrupted you, Tewid, but go ahead. Please continue.
It was not an interruption. It is a conversation, and everything that we talk about in terms of cooperatives and democratizing our economy is very important. That's why the work that we're doing, here in Guam and rest of Oceania, is so important. We want to have these conversations. We have to have, we want to allow people the ability to make those decisions for community, for themselves at their workplace. But, people spend most of their days at work, 8 to 12 hours. Sometimes they're working 2 jobs, 3 jobs. And so if we're going to be devoting a lot of our time at these workplaces, we might as well have the decision-making ability to say what happens at the workplace, what happens to the profits, and have ownership and control over these workplaces. It just, if you look at the studies, worker-owned enterprises, worker-controlled enterprises are really good. Again, 90%, 80 to 90% success rate, high job retention rates. They often fare better through crisis. So, for example, during the COVID, there were many business cooperatives that fared very well. And in fact, when they come out of the crisis, they're a lot more resilient. When when workers are were empowered to make the decisions for themselves and how to keep their community together, they're going to say, okay, what do we need to do to make the sort of sacrifices we need to make for as a whole, as a collective, for our business, for our workplace, so that it continues to thrive through this crisis, through COVID or a typhoon or an earthquake. And so there was a lot of companies, cooperatives that fared very well through crisis because they made those sacrifices. Unlike, if the CEO has to drop his salary from $300,000 down to $100,000, $200,000, or $50,000, and they make those decisions collectively, it's wonderful. Everything is transparent. And when things are transparent, people are going to collectively make those decisions that's best for themselves and for their community. We saw that in San Francisco. We saw that in Seattle. There's a cooperative in San Francisco called the Rainbow Grocery. It's cooperatively owned. People were making the decision to say, hey, let's mask up so we can protect our customers, protect ourselves. Let's work less hours. And those that need more hours, let's get them to work more hours because they have some health conditions or they're taking care of their parents. So but the beauty of it is the decision is within the workers, and the workers are an extension of the community. So you're not just empowering the workers, but you're also empowering community. Economic democracy is called. There's this economic democracy. Economic democracy allows more people to come to the decision-making table so that they can collectively decide how to use land, labor, and capital to benefit us all. And that's what economic democracy is about. And so if we have more economic democracy, it's better for our community. There's this economic democracy index model that I like to share with a lot of people. And there's this study called The New Meaning of Economic Democracy, and it was published by the University of Glasgow by several professors. And it's they have this economic democracy index model, and there's countries that rank high and rank low in this model. So if you look at it, countries like Finland, Denmark, Switzerland, it's no surprise that they rank very high. And you look at it and you say, how are they ranking so high in this economic democracy index? And what happens when you rank high in the economic democracy index model? Well, when you rank high in the economic democracy index model, it means you have reduced number of income inequality, and you have significant reduction in poverty. So it's no surprise that countries like Denmark, Switzerland, Finland often rank high in the economic democracy index model. And so the professors were trying to figure out why are they so good at ranking in this index. And they looked at the certain elements, and elements were worker protection, unions, democratic governance, democratic participation, and cooperatives. And when you have cooperatives that are more part of the economy, then it means that the population has more say in how to shape and influence their economy that benefits the rest of their economy, benefits everybody else. And so so in an essence, it's really allowing more people to come to the decision-making table so they can collectively decide how to use land, labor, and capital to benefit to benefit everybody. That's really essentially what economic democracy is, and why it's so important. If studies are showing that cooperatives are good, if studies are showing that cooperatives are good for economy and helping economic democracy, it's no it's really no brainer why we can't just follow things that are working in other countries. For example, one of the things that often makes me wonder is why isn't Medicare for all in the U.S.? We know it works. Studies show it works. Why isn't it happening? So cooperatives show that they're great for the economy, and studies show it, and we just have to follow what those countries are doing. But I will acknowledge that we want to look at Denmark and Europe, doing so well. But at the end of the day, indigenous people have been doing this for thousands of years. They come together and they look at community and they allow community to make those sort of decisions for themselves. And we know it works. It's worked for thousands of years. When community is involved, they're going to want to do things that collectively make the decisions that's good for their community, and that's what indigenous traditions have been about. It's focused on community.
No, Sidus Masi for bringing up that last point there. And we've gotten a few I think most everyone who's watching is absolutely supportive of it. But we have I've got a question here though, which I think you might get every once in a while though. And it's really a question of how people are supportive of these policies as long as they don't know the American ideological buzzwords, right? So, for example, if people don't hear Bernie Sanders, then they like these things. If they don't hear socialism, then they like them, right? And so people say they don't want government health care, but they say don't touch my Medicare. And so and so and so what I think what this person is asking is how can we push through that? Because one of the things that I think we find here in this part of the world is that part of our colonial experience is the fact that we've accepted economic models, we've accepted certain ideological assumptions, most people have. And so how do we get people to kind of push past that? So I think to embrace something which is better for our community when, you know, somebody may think somebody who is Chamorro or another islander from this region may watch enough Fox News, for example, and may think that socialism is like I don't know, it's like the devil's Finadeni or something like that. And then not even think that, well, not make a connection with the fact that socialism versus sort of the crony capitalism that dominates American life, socialism might be closer to the way your ancestors lived and might actually be closer to what you want in your life in your community. So what is your response to that? Because I think I got a very long comment from somebody who's watching who said that they love this, but is it achievable because so many people accept kind of an American framework that a lot of this stuff is communism, it's bad, it's evil, you can't do it. So what are your thoughts on that?
Well, easily spend an hour, discussing this part, maybe 2 hours. There's books and academic books that talk about these sort of things. Yeah, thousands of pages of books that just cover this piece, right? And so for me, it's there. I understand there's a lot of buzzwords, but for me, it's we have to focus on our community. Focus on meeting if we generally just focus on meeting the needs of our community, the unmet needs, and you give them the decision making abilities, it's really it's as that simple. What do our community need, and how do we empower them to meet those unmet needs? Yeah, we could spend a whole hour, 2 hours talking about these buzzwords. Totally understand, but we do know that cooperative is a bipartisan issue, right? The Main Street Act in 2021 was focused on cooperatives. It was passed with a bipartisan legislation. Uh, Bills that have been passed in Colorado, San Francisco, California, Washington State that focus on cooperatives is a bipartisan issue. It always has bipartisan support. So whether you're on the whether you're whatever you identify yourself with, cooperative has a huge support from large spectrum of the population. So it's really that simple. If you just focus, for me, it's like I talk about how to meet, or how do we find ways to meet the needs of our community and just simply empower them with the decision making tools, and we can really go through all those different types of layers that often restricts us or prevents us from doing what we need to do. But I know some people want to hear concrete answers, and just know that cooperative, it has a bipartisan support. In fact, the bill, when it was passed, it was a 11-2 with two people, or with the rest being unpresent because they were, I think, had other obligations, family obligations. So, we had the Republicans and the Democrats supporting it. So it's, cooperative focuses on entrepreneurship, economic stability, sustainability, it equity. But what we do know is, if we just look at the studies and how cooperatives are very good for our community, it'll transcend all these identity uh, identity issues that often kind of makes us get stuck. But for those that are to answer other parts of that question is, one is we need to focus on movements, support movements, focus on movements. Those movements are doing some really good, important things for our community, for our economy. So we can't abandon those. And so in a way, we have to think globally, but we have to act locally. We cannot be ignorant and naive that we cannot just ignore what's happening globally. And so movements are an important part of building solidarity, building the type of, well, compounding the type of work that we're doing in the community level. And so movements are important. We can't abandon those.
No,
it,
yeah. No, Sidusmasi. I think yeah, you bring up a good point that this is that moving beyond sort of some of the ideological labels that people attach to these things is important. I mean, it's so easy nowadays to be partisan and divisive, and it's part of the problem. It's part of the problem is that why, especially in the United States and in other countries, is that people forget that you can try to solve a lot of these problems that you face, or you can just fight endlessly about things, right? So, like, do you want people to have health care? Do you want the rich to continue to get richer and the poor to continue to get poorer? Like, what do you want to do about the problems in a country? Do you want to solve them, or do you want to simply uh, distract people and get people angry about stuff so you don't have to do or change anything? And the problem, I think the big problem, is that as a politician, it's always easier to make people angry as opposed to trying to solve any problems. And so, whenever somebody comes along and says that, oh, here's some plans for how we could fix the healthcare system, it's easier to kind of to yell about the border is wide open and they're taking our jobs and this and that or something, or talk about, oh my goodness. And so yeah, I think that's one of the reasons why, but I do have, for something like this here in our community here in Guam, and especially in the wider Micronesia, we are influenced heavily by things that are coming in from the United States, but we also have the ability to build things for ourselves. And even earlier on in our conversation today, you just mentioned the simple fact that, like when somebody, I think you said like when somebody is gonna like leave ownership of a business, or when they pass on or something, that the employees have like the right to potentially buy it. Like something like that would be like really important to think about in a society, in terms of trying to give more opportunities for people that have invested their time, their labor, their lives in something, that give them another level of ownership and give them a chance to do something more in society, as opposed to just handing off power and privilege within the upper class, which is kind of what normally happens. So that's something that we could easily do here, and it would have like a material impact. Because imagine if that became standardized, and it might start off very small, but imagine if it happened in a few cases where it was wildly successful, where somebody passes away and the employees say, we want to start a cooperative in the store, and we're going to be the owners now, and we're going to try this out. And I think it'll be really nice, because when we think about what it takes to live on a small island, it doesn't take like the big fat cat CEOs. It takes people working together. It takes people working together. And so, but anyways, so yes, so that's why I think I'm hopeful. I'm hopeful about that. And so I wanted to see, from the business community, small businesses, large businesses, what is the response that you've gotten so far? Have you gotten any interest in cooperatives?
Yeah, there we've had a lot of interest. And but before I answer that question, before I forget, because I really like what you're talking about, the workers in the community owning their workplace. It's a good thing, right? When we have the community, the workers in the community owning their workplace, they it goes back to the studies of cooperatives. Cooperatives pay their fair share of taxes. It goes into the circular economy. Economy, not in the sense of reusing material and then recycling it, but circular economy in terms of when the business generates revenue, it goes back to the workers. And when it goes back to workers, the workers have more money spending into the community. So it's a circular economy in terms of when the business makes lots of money, generates a huge amount of profits, the workers can decide how to utilize that profit. They can say, okay, wonderful, let's use that profit towards increasing our wages, or let's use that extra profits to increase our health benefits, or let's increase our the donations that we're giving to Micronesian Climate Change Alliance. And so the the profits and the revenue is staying in the economy and is being redistributed back to the workers, to the community, back into the economy. So it's circular economy, and we want that. When more businesses are worker owned, work controlled, we have more revenue that's being uh, distributed back into the economy. And we know that cooperatives pay their fair share of taxes, and so I'll just add real quick. There's a that's why in states like Colorado, Washington State, and California, they have put employee ownership programs at the economic development agency level. And so when workers in California, there's this thing called the silver tsunami crisis. The silver tsunami crisis is a crisis where as baby boomers who own their businesses are retiring from business ownership and entrepreneurship, they don't know what to do with their business. And so a lot of the times it closes, or they end up selling it to a foreign investor or a large company, a large corporation. And so California has acknowledged that there's this silver tsunami crisis, silver in that baby boomers have silver hair. And so they have programs in place to help baby boomers, business owners, as they sell their business. They're getting ready to sell the business. They transition it over to the workers, so the workers get a loan program, and they also get training by the government program. And that's a really new, great program. And I wish, and long term wise, we hope to have something like that under the GITA agency.
Oh man, that's a great idea. I mean, oh no, I mean I'm glad that some states are thinking about that because that's, you know, especially when you think that some countries are grappling with issues that like population declines and aging populations. And I mean, when I hear about some of the stuff that the federal government under the Trump administration is planning right now, they're going to give you a medal if you got like 6 kids. And it's like, oh, wow, well, why don't you like make it so why don't you like stop trying to cut funding for like childcare and like healthcare programs and stuff like that instead, and giving mothers with a bunch of kids medals? And it's like, but I think that a lot of stuff that's happening in the United States right now, though, in the Trump administration, I'm hopeful that it really highlights for because we can see it with what's happening in a number of other countries where there's authoritarian streaks where strong men who are embodying the same principle of like one man deciding so many things, which is very similar to like the hotshot CEO of the company, like the big man, the president, the chief executive, that person, the tyrant. And so it's like, but other countries are picking other figures, kind of people who embody more democratic principles. And I'm hopeful that Donald Trump is reminding people in the United States that you need to have more than just one person at the top or just a few people at the top who get to have so much power over everything, whether that's throwing up tariffs or whether it's, deciding due process. Yeah, we don't got to follow that anymore, or all of these things. And so, I mean, what you and Micronesian Climate Change Alliance, Pacificnesian Equities, you're talking about this from the ground up, from the economic principles up. And so that's what I love about this. Go ahead. Go ahead.
Thank you so much for adding that. And um, the I know we are running out of time here, but I do want to say that with this bill that we passed, amazing folks were part of putting this together and pushing it. It's a community focused effort, and just folks like and I had named the folks from Micronesian Climate Change Alliance and other folks, but there's other folks within the community that got involved. Folks like Miracle Mogul, Tori Manley, Joshua Lorente, Kaylin Perez, um, folks and Nikki Gray, and there's a long list of people that were involved, and it just Michelle Crisostomo, and so, and I apologize if I missed names. It's just how beautiful it is because it's community, and yourself, Miguel, you were there, you testified, so we were very thankful, Jenna Abinalis, again, the list is long, and it just shows that people this goes to answering your question that you asked earlier. It's people are excited about this. The community's excited about it. They realize that they can help a economy transition to a more just transition, a economy that focuses on empowerment and equity rather than exploitation and extraction. The system that we have now is very extractive, very exploitive, and we want to transit. And more people that become familiar and aware of cooperatives, they realize that they can take ownership of their economy. They can be empowered to have control in the workplace if if we come together as a community. And that's beautiful. This bill is it's a reflection of what people want. um, and when community gets involved and collectively take action, wonderful things happen. And then just to touch base on the US, right? The US is like, the policies are not reflective of what people want, right? 70 to 80% of people support Medicaid for all. 65 to 75% of people of the population don't want to be involved in endless war. Marijuana, it's 60 to 75% of the population support legalizing marijuana at a national level. And so, how do we get community? How do we have community to be empowered in having an economy that reflects their what they want? And we start by, one is democratizing our enterprise and focusing on economic democracy. I think that's one of the biggest thing is that we have these problems is because we have economic system that is dominated by corporations that are just focused on extractive and exploitive measures, which it's a different type of business model. It's a business model that you can choose to utilize, but we know that it's not going to help community and build a stronger and resilient community. So we need to be aware and conscientious about how do we move forward and focus on business models that are equitable and sustainable.
No, Sidus Mossing. It's no, this, yeah, this is so important. I'm glad for all of the work that you and all the people that you've mentioned have done to really build this. And I'm hoping that, I mean, when I was just talking about kind of the Trump administration earlier, one of the things that we find, um, there's a lot of negatives, a lot of uncertainty in the world right now. But one of the things, though, that I think that maybe we can draw from this is that people might be more willing to kind of go back to basics and rethink some things. Because when you think about it, like the way the status quo, maybe it really does need to go because it doesn't feel stable anymore. It doesn't feel like it feels a little bit uneasy and uncertain right now. And so I'm hopeful that people will as a Guam in particular, as the small island that's been colonized for a long time, we always feel this need to kind of look out. What's the next big thing? What's the next thing that we can bring in to kind of solve the economic crisis, to make all our economic worries go away? And it's kind of like, well, are we, I don't, if somebody emails you and says that they're a prince of a foreign country saying they've got this $1 billion panacea to solve all your economic problems, it's probably a scam. And so what we should be doing is looking inward and thinking, let's get back to basics. And like you said, let's think about circular economy. Let's think about what we can do to make sure that our economic models helps us, that it isn't about sort of like serving others, being where somebody else's day begins, where the tip of somebody else's spear, somebody else's economic boon and benefit. And a lot of that begins then with having these economic models that are grounded in community, in democracy, in these sorts of values that serve us. And so I really appreciate you bringing this, bringing this into the conversation, into the political conversation, to doing the work to get it into law, so that those who want to model their businesses in this way can do it, can do it. And so I want to give you some time now for your final thoughts um, as we close this episode. And so you can use this time now to any way that you'd like, just some to share some inspiration or to point people in the direction of resources. I went ahead and shared like a link to some like a Richard Wolf video for on the live stream, and then also put the links to your website and so on. But anything that you'd like to share to kind of end the conversation today, por favor, go ahead.
Thank you, Miguel. Appreciate that. Yeah, the one is, we still got a long way to go. We got lots of work to do. Our capacity is stretched in because we're, focused on other parts of the movement. We're focusing on how do we put this integrate these sort of these programs, education programs into SBDC, the School of Business. And so we got a long ways to go. There's things that we want to do. We want to partner with credit unions. We want to partner up with a law firm. We want to put a working group together in Saipan so we can help them push their bill. There's a lot of work to be done. We want to help build a platform where when businesses are ready to form a cooperative, they have templates that can be provided, because we want business to succeed in transitioning into cooperatives, and we want it to be free. If you make it expensive, you charge it. If you charge, it's going to be very difficult to transition into a just economy when you're trying to make a profit that way. So our goal is to help transition from an exploitative, extractive economy to an economy focused on empowerment and equity. And so there's lots of work to be done. And we definitely, need all the help we can get. If you're a teacher, consider incorporating these sort of cooperatives into your curriculum. If you're a banker, consider putting together financing terms for business that want to transition to workers. If you're a government worker, consider finding ways to introduce legislation or implementing ways on how to help workers transition into cooperatives. So there's lots of work to be done. But the simple thing is, just consider learning more about cooperatives and how can help community.
Si Diyos masi, Tewid, and si Diyos masi no hamzo todos. Pueden este episode Fanachu. And now este Fanapo, adios. Este kimana lihet.